We talk about the deep state. We talk about the globalists.
Inflation versus deflation.
Well, I mean,
You're at Mar-a-Lago.
I'm baffled that this isn't front page news.
Do you guys support a specific political party, or do you dislike both of them?
Oh, it worked like a charm on you guys.
Let's go, Brandon.
What is up, everybody? We are here tonight with my good buddy Jordan that I met on Minnect a few weeks ago. So Jordan reached out to me, and my favorite type of people out there are the people that I learn a lot from. So I'm a curious guy. I'm always looking at what's going on in the world and what I should know about. And Jordan was just like dropping heat from the second we started talking on Minnect. He was like telling me like a Canada deep dive. Jordan's from Canada, so I said, you know what, Jordan, I'm going to have you on the podcast because it's an important time right now for Canada because the election's coming up. And Mark Carney seems like a psychopath, and Pierre, I'm not a huge fan of him right now, but I definitely think that he would be better for Canada. So we're going to do a bit of a Canada deep dive tonight. So, Jordan, thank you so much for joining. How you doing?
Appreciate you for having me. I'm good. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll give a little background on myself here.
Yes, please.
Born and raised in the center of Canada, right in Regina, Saskatchewan, known as the Queen City. Spent a little bit of time. Give me a sec here. Spent a little bit of time doing road construction when I got out of high school. From there, I decided to change and get into financial services. Started getting a little bit of insight on the business community and how kind of systems work, and wanted to understand things better. And it's led me to this point. And in all of this research, I've discovered some pretty inequitable things about Canada for a place that wants to be as diverse as they claim to be. So I just want to lay the facts out, especially we're 30 days out from an election, and people really do need to get their facts together and see what's happening so that they have a real good perspective of what could play out based off of what has played out and everything. And it's just a continuous cycle because of the way we're positioned. So
And Canada's people in America might say like, oh, what do I care about Canada? But Canada's a really important place for America. Like a massive amount of natural resources there, and a very strategically important place to America, especially with the way that their political landscape ends up falling out. So what's front of mind for you in terms of things that the average person in America or Canada doesn't know about that they should know about, that they should be paying attention to?
Well, 75% of Canada's economy is based off of the trade done with the United States. So as much as Canada and the news cycle that is played up here and the way the mainstream media down south kind of tries to parrot what's being said up here, it's not true. We absolutely need the United States. We need these free trade agreements based off of formerly NAFTA, USMCA now, and making it so that our economies can bolster one another. The United States needs what we have, and we need what the United States wants to do.
The consumption base.
Exactly. We are a service-based economy in Canada. The United States is kind of a service-based economy depending on where you live. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to it, they manufacture and they produce innovation for the world that gets copycatted by everybody else.
I'm surprised to hear you say that. My assumption would have been that Canada is more of a commodity-based economy. You don't think so?
We are commodity-based, but we're restricted by our we've got interprovincial, like in Canada, it's provinces, not states, and there's interprovincial tariffs against one another on their resources. It's absolutely ridiculous the way they've got it set up. And then we've got another thing that we'll get into here called equalization. It's transfer payments because of each province based off their individual, because each province is given anonymity of their resources, but then the federal government goes and puts a tax on whatever it is based off of the transfer payments. And we'll get into that. So I'll give you a little bit of perspective here. We're going to go through basically the three issues that have been facing Canada for generations on end. And the main one here is the seating arrangement off the start. It's really bad. We've got a House of Commons. It's set up very much like the British parliamentary system. So if anybody understands that, they'll be able to understand it really quickly. And in the United States, they have it set up so you're kind of side by side. Even if you're on the opposition, you have to sit beside each other and talk side by side like you're at the table. Yeah. But in Canada, you're sitting across from one another. It's like the wooded aisle and then the open space where you sit and debate. And it's supposed to be a place of conversation, but it's not. It's just back and forth. It's a battleground. A good example would be there's this thing called the tanker ban. It's called Bill C-48. That's one of our things that we have in Canada. And what they wanted to do was do preservation of marine life and things of that sort off the coast of northern BC after there was a major tanker spill, I believe, that was on the coast of Alaska and BC in 94, I believe it was. So there was some horrors from that, and it's understandable. But to be able to hamstring your own country just because you don't want to ship your resources off a coast, like we don't need to ship oil. We can ship our grain resources. We've got to deal with India in Saskatchewan here, where I'm from, where they consume they'd be 60% of our protein-based lentils that they consume, and that's because they're feeding about 400 million vegetarians in a population of 1.6 billion people.
India.
Yeah, and that's just one of the many different Asian countries that buy the goods and services, or the goods that we have from our country, and we have to find ways to get it to them. But if we can't ship it off our coast, we have to use the United States, and there's those shipping routes to be able to do it.
So unpack that. So oil tanker moratorium, or oil tanker what? Oil tanker ban?
It was just not even oil tanker, just a tanker ban. So no tankers were allowed. So oil tanker moratorium. But what ended up happening was it didn't allow any shipping of any kind on the north coast. So it made everything happen to the south coast bordering the United States there up into southern BC. Well, 2/3 of the port access for our goods to leave our country are happening on the north ports. So
no Arctic water access at all?
Well, it wouldn't be Arctic water access. It would be bordering on Alaska there.
Okay.
The Arctic water you'd be thinking of would be between Quebec and Nunavut, going up north, the North Passage.
So who decided to do that?
That was just something that was done. We can get into that right here as the seating. So there's 338 seats in Canada, and there's 13 provinces. So Ontario, the main province where the country's capital is, Ottawa, there's 122 seats in that one province. And then you have the rest of Canada. You will start in Manitoba, bordering Ontario, and then continue west. There's 4 provinces and then 3 territories. That makes up only 107 seats.
All right, so I got a map up right here to make it a little bit visually easier for everybody. So is this a good way to show?
Exactly. So the yellow here, 122. The rest of them all over here, these 7 on to the left of it, 107. And then
what's
Quebec,
that based on population density?
it's population density, because there's 15 million people here. So 40% of Canada's population lives here. But 20% of the GDP, based like gross domestic product, is produced where only 17% of the entire population lives. Why does the United States have the Electoral College? Because 40% of the GDP is generated where only 3% of the population lives. Yet 85% of the population are condensed into 7 specific states. And Tom always says 85% of the Canadian population lives within 100 miles of the US border. Well, there it is.
Right. So here we go. So I have a population density map up right now. So you're talking about this right here.
Oh yeah, like that's the GTA. Like I believe in the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, that's a whole bunch of suburbs. There's like 70 some seats just in there.
And this right here, you see my mouse on the screen?
Yeah.
This is where you live, correct?
Yeah, I'm right here, like basically right here in the orange of Saskatchewan there. So there's the 2 points of orange. This point of orange would be Saskatoon, the privatized city center that I was talking to you about. And then Regina is the government city center. Up north, if you go a little bit to the left in the 2 red dots, that's Edmonton. That's the government. That's the capital of Alberta. This is Calgary. This is where all the oil money and private sector industry happens here.
What should I type in to show what the natural resource density looks like?
You should be able to just pull up if you can, pull up the mineral map of Saskatchewan that I sent you, just to give some context of what's actually available here for potash, forestry, agriculture, uranium for nuclear power and everything, for looking for alternative energy. Never mind the oil sands and the LNG with gas pooling.
Right.
We have so many different things available, but we're hamstrung.
So what do you think their goal is? And I mean, like, I'm asking this for the audience, not for myself. I know what the goal is, but what do you think the goal is with them trying, like, hamstringing themselves like this?
Well, I believe it really breaks down to the Indigenous people that are in Canada, because in the United States, they were sectioned off and given their own land, and there wasn't anything about it. You just don't pay tax. You don't do anything. We don't screw with your land. You don't screw with ours. In Canada, it's different. What we did was we created something called treaties. Mm-hmm. And the further west you go, the less relevant the treaties are. So once you get to Western Alberta going into BC, there's a lot of Indigenous groups that decided not to sign on to treaties because there's a federal doctrine called the Indian Act that governs all Indigenous lands, which are known as Crown lands. And because we're part of the monarchy, part of the British Commonwealth, any Indigenous lands are known as Crown lands, just as any government-run organizations or entities that provide service are known as Crown corporations.
Got it.
So
you guys are really at the mercy of the UK, huh?
Oh, it's so bad. And like we hold an election, and then in order for things to sign off, it's the lieutenant governor that signs off on it on behalf of the royal family, I believe. It's a really stupid system that we have set up. We do not live in a democracy here.
No,
it's
it
really
seem like
bad.
It one bit.
So everybody was bitching about, so we heard everyone bitching about why Pierre's not going to be on, why hasn't he been on TV? Why hasn't he done this? Why hasn't he done interviews? The seating density in Canada is why. Of the 107 seats in Western Canada in those 7 provinces, Pierre's probably going to get 90 to 95 of them. In Quebec, of the 78, he might get 20. Mm-hmm. In the Maritimes, there's 33, I believe, and he'll probably get 20 of those, 25 maybe, if he's lucky. Mm-hmm. In Ontario, he's had to be on the ground with his constituents that are running in the individual seating ridings in Ontario, because 122 ridings. Yeah, that's a big pool.
Yeah.
Once the writ drops, so the Governor General does what's called dropping the writ, which then puts campaign limits for spending on how much you can spend each candidate and each party leader and everything else like that. But previous to the writ dropping, there's no limit on money on campaign spending. So that's why he wasn't on TV, is because he needed to be on the ground in all the different constituencies in Ontario, getting people door knocking with the people running in those areas. Because there's a lot of new first and second time running candidates. He needed to make sure they're there because he's been there 20 plus years. He's written a great book that people should read. It's basically an expansion of his dissertation when he finished university there, which is equivalent to college. So it's really, really good. And he talks about freedom. Well, he was talking about freedom when he was 24 years old, graduating from university. It's really been the most consistent we've seen of a Canadian politician in a long, long time.
Speaking of that, is there a Canadian politician that stands out amongst the prime ministers that you had where you're like, oh, that was a good one?
Harper was the equivalent of what we're getting now with Pierre Poilievre. The difference is Harper was an economics major and political science minor. Pierre, I believe, is an economics minor and a political science major. So he understands the economy, but he knows how to play the game, which is more important in Canada because of seating position, I believe.
And he was the one who was right before Trudeau, right?
Yes. Yeah, he was the one that was in there for 11 years. So when the housing downturn happened, we weren't really affected too incredibly bad in Canada. We were able to reposition and have a really good rebound from it. And then again in 2015, before he was voted out, when the downturn in the market happened, he made sure that we were positioned accordingly so that when that downturn happened, we weren't hit at all from it. Like in 2015, nobody's stocks or anything went down in Canada.
I'll show housing in a second because that's wild. But I remember looking this up recently. And so this is number of violent crimes in Canada from 2002 to 2023. So this is the Harper time. And then what, Trudeau gets elected in 2014?
Yes, 2015.
2015. So Harper brings it all the way down to here. Then it just explodes under Trudeau. That's pretty insane.
I'll bring in some context. I believe there was some really harsh bail reform happening for violent repeat offenders that were brought in 2012, 2013 after I think there was an election in 2011 or 2012. And because believe it's every 5 years. And what happened was with the bail reforms, it made it harder to get bail if you're a repeat offender or a violent criminal. So that's where the crimes really dropped off. To give it perspective, in Vancouver, like in Western Canada, there were 660 crimes committed by the same 44 people. That was over a 1 year period.
Jeez.
So, and that's based
like
off
California, huh?
Oh, it's so bad. And like the safe consumption, like people are, I believe it's 3 to 5 people a day are being found dead on the streets in BC, in like mainland BC or coastal BC and they're not reporting it.
What?
It's bad. It's so bad. And it's because of the safe consumption sites.
What's that mean?
Oh, it means
safe consumption sites?
Oh yeah, safe consumption sites in BC.
Canada safe consumption sites. All right, I'm typing that in. What the hell is that? Supervised consumption explained. Is this it?
Yeah, look into that. That's the government's explanation of it. So that's directly from the government of Canada's mouth.
Supervised consumption services save lives and benefit communities. Supervised consumption sites provide safe, clean space for people to bring their own drugs to use in the presence of trained staff. This prevents accidental overdoses and reduces the spread of infectious diseases such as HIV. So it's basically like a methadone clinic on steroids.
Yeah, it's basically like a drug bar where you bring your own drugs.
Oh my God.
And they'll provide you all the safe equipment to consume those drugs.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's a paraphernalia. Yeah, I'll give you your paraphernalia to do your drugs.
Services offered at sites, access to clean drug use equipment and place to safely dispose of items such as needles after use, drug checking to detect if drugs contain other more harmful substances, emergency medical care in case of overdoses, cardiac arrest, or allergic reaction, basic health services such as wound care, testing, infectious diseases like HIV, hepatitis C, and sexually transmitted diseases, access to healthcare providers and support staff, including mental health treatment, education on the harms of drug use, safer consumption practices, and safer sex, access to medications to treat opioid use disorder under the oversight of healthcare provider, referrals for drug treatment, access to referrals to social services such as housing or employment supports. Gee, what? That's insane. What happens at these sites? A person brings their drugs to the site to consume. Depending on the site, drugs are injected, snorted, or inhaled, or consumed as pills. Trained staff are available to help if there is an accidental overdose. Needs of the community determine hours of operation for sites and types of services provided. The type of staff varies by site, but generally includes nursing staff, social workers, and peer and community workers. All right. I mean, the crazy thing about this is that anybody I talked to from Canada, and I asked them about what's their socialized healthcare system. Like they say, you wait for hours and hours and hours at the hospital for the most simple thing. So
go look up
audacious that they have nurses at something like this.
You can look up the average surgery wait time in Canada. So average hip or knee surgery and wait time in Canada. So my uncle is 72 years old. He's needed hip surgery for about 8 months, and there's still another 20 months that he has to wait.
6 months.
Yeah, and that's from 2022.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So shortest 30, longest. Like go down a little bit and look at the hips.
Okay.
Go back to where you were and look, and it'll give you the average of all the different ones.
Hip 182 days, knee replacement 182 days, bladder cancer surgery 23 days, breast cancer surgery 18 days, prostate cancer surgery 21 days.
Like these are common surgeries that if we had a two-tier healthcare system where people who have the funds to afford it could pay to do it, they would do it. But most of them, like my parents said, well, if we ever needed to do something medically, we would just go to Hawaii and get it done there.
Whoa, look at this. So this is comparing 1993 wait times in Canada to 2024. What happened? Was it socialized back then or no?
Lean and Sigma 6 efficiency. So what ended up happening was for every doctor they had in a ward, there was 12 nurses, and the nurses would be the ones doing the administrative work. Now they've brought in administrative members and board members and all that kind of stuff. And for every doctor, there are now only 4 to 6 nurses.
And some nurses are used at those consumption sites.
Well, exactly. And then you make it so that you have government unions that help, that are set up not for the benefit of the people, but for the benefit of allowing nurses to do double and triple shifts, to pad their pockets and things like that. Now, don't get me wrong. The system, they work within a system that was refined for them to be able to do that. It takes the higher ups to change that. We're in it's not just there. It's in the provincial systems within governments across Canada. It's in the municipal union systems across Canada. It's in the federal unions across Canada. You want to see something crazy?
What?
Go look up the Sunshine List for Ontario public sector workers.
I just wanted to look up America quick for the comparison. So it's 28 days for the average surgery wait time in America compared to 182 in Canada. So anybody who advocates for socialized healthcare, just think about that before you advocate for it too hardly.
Pardon my language, but anything socialized is shit.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like name one. I love when people name what is it? Those Nordic countries. Is it the Nordic countries that do somewhat socialism, like Denmark?
Those homogenized places that only have 4 to 6 million people that don't allow diversity, that have nationalized their resources and have international deals where they socialize their resources, tax their people 60%, and then make all their money off of international trade.
Mm-hmm.
That's socialism.
No, it's just like blessed circumstances where you have a low population and like high value natural resources. So you can. It's like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does a lot of passing around of money because they have natural resources.
That's soft communism, is what it is.
Yep, 100%. But it's just not as visible and scary when you have enough to not let everybody starve.
Yeah, like 28 days of wait time for the United States for surgeries as compared to 182 days on average for knee or hip surgery in Canada.
Yeah, like go ahead and argue with that.
365 days? Like what the heck?
No, you can't. Yeah, you can't argue with that. So what were you saying? Look up what sunshine provisions?
Look up the Sunshine List for the Sunshine List for Ontario public sector workers.
Public sector workers. Ontario's 2024 Sunshine List is out. See top. All right, is this it?
Yeah. People making over 100K a year in the public sector working for the government.
Oh, wow. So President and Chief Officer of Ontario Power Generation, $2 million. Wow. Keith or Kenneth Hartwick, you know that guy?
Nope. These are all Ontario provincial employees.
So these are state companies, not like companies that run through the state.
Yes, these are all state-run organizations, and these are the people that are getting paid through them. Wow. So go look at the total of what it is that they're getting paid combined.
Let's see. Where would that be? Is it on the same page, you think?
Yeah, it should be up at the top, I believe.
Let's see.
It should give a total. Zoom out a little bit so I can see what that is. Okay, that's a CBC one.
Maybe if I control F total.
Yeah, it should tell you that it's around 39 billion Canadian.
Really? 39 billion? What the hell is their GDP?
Well, there's 15 million people in Ontario.
Uh-huh.
And there's probably 390,000 of those that are public sector employees making $100,000 or more. Well, there's 39 billion right there.
Jeez.
So 390,000 public sector workers in one province making 100,000 or more. I believe the average income of those is 124,000.
You know, what's an interesting question I'm about to ask is what percent of total Canadian jobs are public sector jobs? Like, what would you get? Would you guess that's over 50%?
In Canada, it's about 45%.
Oh, is it?
And based off of economics and the way a country can function, I think the maximum GDP a country can have based off of the government output compared to private sector output is 22.5%. Anything above that, you start getting into a fiscal deficit because you're costing more to pay people to do things than you are for production of money coming in.
Right. And it's not the market asking for that service. It's the government declaring that service is necessary.
So I believe with the amount of public sector workers that were added federally, provincially, across all of Canada, since in the last 9.5 years under the Liberal government, which they're all about socialized things, which means you have to hire people of the government and take things over. I believe Canada's GDP for government sector output is 44.5%. That's 50% higher than it should be.
Oh my God, yeah, it's
So
terrible.
our projected deficit was supposed to be $40 billion this year, Canadian.
Yeah,
They ended up coming out to 61.9 billion.
that's ridiculous.
So that just shows you. And then also in the last 10 years, we've had $500 billion in foreign investment leave Canada.
In the last 10 years.
Yep. Yeah, because of the amount of restrictions and regulations that have been put in to make it so that it's so hard to get approved for anything.
That's ridiculous. All right, so here's a funny one that we have to talk about. I mean, not funny, but like so ridiculous that you have to laugh at it.
Yeah.
So people think that house prices in the U.S. are bad, which they are. It's terrible. It's like went from $285 for an average priced house 4 years ago to like probably $450. But look at how Canada house prices compare to U.S. house prices. So this is just a percent growth, but I believe the average house price in Canada is $712,000 for just a regular home.
Yep, regular 1,200 square foot bungalow.
That's disgusting. That's worse than California.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And
the reason for that is because in order to be able to prevent mass inflation, when you're bringing people in, you have to keep building homes, the single family dwellings. You can't build multifamily dwellings and expect families to grow and stay growing when they're stuck in these tin can places.
right.
So when you make it absolutely ridiculously impossible and not financially feasible to even build a house, never mind buy the land to do the building, why would you even do that? You see where Adam comes in with, just rent. Don't bother buying. I can't tell you how many people that, like, I'm 37 years old. I can't tell you how many people I know that are in their mid to late 30s that still live downtown and have decided I'm just not going to have a family because it can't be done.
Yeah, it's a really effective way to slow population growth if that just happened to be something you wanted to do.
So
there's no conceivable reason why, like, they're the country with the second most lumber in the world. Like, you guys have like an infinite supply of trees in Canada. There's no reason that this should be happening.
I believe what you should do now is you should show the map of Saskatchewan that I sent you.
I was looking for. Would you mind resending that to my email so I can pull it up?
Yeah.
Do you have it handy?
Yeah, I do.
All right, cool.
Let me get in here.
Yeah,
I was actually just looking at that.
Yeah, that's a good map. Because I mean, like I always preach this. I always preach that like the best thing that can be done for society is for like through deflationary innovation to drive down the prices of housing, food, energy, transportation. You drive that shit down, you're not going to have poverty. You're not going to have crimes of desperation. Like if we get to a place where those things are like 10% of the average income rather than 60% of the average income, then we'd be in a really good place.
Well, yeah, and when you take a philanthropic look of the way you're doing business, first thing that you should do in your economy is make sure everybody's got a house, like a roof over their head.
Yeah.
And if you know that everyone's living comfortably, can pay their bills that way, you make sure that they have food on the table.
Right.
Once you've taken care of the roof over their head and food on the table, and I'm not talking I'm talking they've taken the time to earn it and grow it and be responsible for it and learn what they need to learn.
And it's a reasonable price, which is determined by government policy.
Exactly. And then from there, once people know that they can take care of themselves because they have a home, they can eat, they can start having creative freedom, but it's not in a selfish way anymore because they're not looking for the house or the food. They can start being creative with their freedom, they can have creative freedom in thinking about how they can help their community.
Exactly.
And that's where we need to get to. This is where you see a lot of these billionaires. They don't do it for the money. They do it for the social factor that they can affect change. Because if you look at all of these multimillionaire and billionaires, where do most of their philanthropic means go to? Usually where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you can tell who's authentic in what they do and what they don't do, and that who's authentic and who's not in what they do. Are they donating locally, or are they just blanketing it and sending it to some big guy to take 98% in fees and actually only give 2% to where it's supposed to go?
Yeah.
So,
and those philanthropy things, those are real black holes sometimes for money.
Oh yeah, they're so bad. Like, I don't even want to get into like the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation and the connection to the family and all that crap. Like, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
All right, we could save that for another time.
Exactly. So I want to get into the equalization of these transfer payments of why the inequity happens in Canada.
Yeah, hit me.
Because you look at the resource map that I sent you and you pull that up.
Yep.
Everybody knows about Alberta oil. We all hear about Alberta oil and the pipelines. That's blah, blah. We hear that left, right, and center.
Right.
This is where the real cash cow for all of Canada is. So pull that up on the screen and I'll give everybody a little bit of a rundown on it.
Here we go. All right.
Yeah. So we'll start at the top there. You see all that giant yellow?
Yep.
That's the purest form of uranium that you can pull out of the ground, and basically in 3 to 5 phases of refinement, it's ready to go into a nuclear facility.
And uranium is massively important for the direction the world's going in, and very few countries have a lot of it.
Exactly. Well, you see, if you zoom in a little bit on that pocket there, you'll notice all the red dots and everything there. So you get into rare earth elements. Those are some of the major things that are needed for EV and all that stuff. So yeah, go back over and you see the red dots over top of where the uranium is there.
Yep.
That's all rare earth element. That's super crucial for all sorts of different heavy metal mining and all the different elements needed for EVs and all that kind of battery production to be able to do the green energy.
And how rare is this stuff? Like how scarce is it amongst the rest of the world? Is it?
I believe Saskatchewan has the 5th largest reserves of it. It's just very deep.
Like deep into the ground, or deep like into the
deep in the ground.
Okay, it's expensive to mine.
Yeah, I believe it's mixed in. The rare earth is mixed in with the uranium, so there's a separation process.
Okay, and it's a heavily regulated thing, I'm assuming, to go after this stuff.
Very, very, very heavy. Well, and then you look at the thick blue lines. That's all base metal potential. Well, all these base metals like your nickel, your cobalt, your zinc, all these other things, those are all other essential metals that are needed for your EV production and everything else like that. And then you see the purple lines that are over top of it. That's lithium.
Here?
Your complete everything that Tesla and every other manufacturer of EVs needs is right there. Never mind, they could build a nuclear reactor to power all of it and negate any need for oil and gas.
Do you guys use nuclear energy at all up there?
No, this is all crown land, as we discussed. It's all covered by Indigenous land. This is all Indigenous land. So it's protected by the federal government and the Indian Act.
Oh, the Indian Act.
Yeah.
Explain that, because that's a really under talked about thing, how they use Indigenous people to like regulate businesses out of doing things that would be good for the country.
Oh yeah, so they use it as a way to keep their thumb over top of the Indigenous groups, so that the minute they go to do any resource production on their land, the federal government takes about 50 to 60% of the revenues right off the bat. And then the 40% or 50% that the group is able to use, there's a full tax levy of 40 to 50% put on it. So if you're only going to take home 20 to 25% of your means of production before you figure out what to use it for, why would you even do anything?
Right. Oh,
so it's just a thumb over top. Well, if we go down south a little bit, we start looking, we can see the brown lines there. That's the Alberta oil sands. We know how that branches over into Saskatchewan a little bit, but not nearly as much as people think.
Right.
Well, all the brown stuff that's underneath there, that's a little bit of gold potential and things like that. The alluvial gold, not very good. But all this green here, that's all forest. That's all pine. That's all aspen.
Lumber.
Yeah, it's all lumber that we need to build homes. Well, that's part of the largest agricultural forest on Earth, and was the boreal forest. It's larger than the Amazon, but it's not as diverse.
Wow.
So the Amazon is the most diverse forest on Earth. The boreal forest is the most abundant forest on Earth.
That's so ass backwards that a place, the largest, most abundant forest in the world, has the most expensive house prices when homes are built out of lumber.
Well, here we're not too expensive. Like I live in a 1,000 square foot bungalow, and it's like my house is fair market value about 250 to 275,000 Canadian.
Okay.
So it's not bad. It's only in like Vancouver, where it's super saturated with foreign money. Toronto, where it's super saturated with foreign money. Montreal, where it's super saturated with foreign money.
Why is foreign more pouring into there?
BC is inundated with the Chinese. That's why That's why there's so many regulations against BC and sanctions against BC from the United States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a law. Like most of the fentanyl that's coming in and all the drugs that are coming into the United States are coming in through Canada and the open border there. It's a land border. Farmers
So
field.
that's the interest, is that they could bring stuff into the United States. So that's why they're buying stuff up. Wow.
Yeah. So as we keep going a little further south, you'll see the red and the green that mixes in with one another. That's gas and oil pool. So that's kind of the Bakken pit, like the kind of like you see there. Like what you see in North Dakota, Montana, that kind of oil and gas. That's what that is.
Got it.
Well, and then the blue lines that are all of that. So the medical industry is super reliant on helium, and that's what that is.
These blue lines?
These blue diagonal lines that start and then do like a reverse, like it's like a graph going down and over across the province. It cuts across the pink that's there.
So like the ones that are like very close to each other, like this?
Yeah, so that one. So those lines, that's all helium production. Wow. That's needed for medical around the world.
That's rare too. Nobody has that.
Very, and we have so much of it.
Are you the biggest?
Zoom back out on it again. And you'll see how
half the map. Almost.
Exactly. And all of that pink that's in there, that's potash. That's what's needed for fertilizer for the world.
Yep.
Like
for potash and two other things for fertilizer that make it up.
There's a few other things, but we have a lot of those as well. That's part of what we have.
Yeah.
And then you like all that potash there, that's all agricultural land as well. Like that's where we grow the lentils. That's where we have soybean production, lentil, corn, canola. Like we're the largest producer of canola oil and canola seed in the world.
Oh, wow. Not that we're fans of canola oil, but just in case people need it.
Well, exactly. It's an alternative seed oil that's available.
Yeah.
It's a little better than vegetable oil.
Mm-hmm. So this is the area you were talking about that like feeds 400 million people in India.
Oh yeah, this whole section of the province here, basically everything around here surrounding this purple, going basically from just below the forest all the way down into the United States there.
Wow, that's insane.
Yep. And then you can see the green, there's a little more gas pool to the southeast there. That's what goes into North Dakota and all that kind of stuff in the United States. That's all the same pool.
Okay.
And then the other lines that are there as well, the purple ones will go in the other way, or is more lithium deposit going into the United States.
Got it. Like what do you think is the value on this area right here in terms of natural resources?
Saskatchewan's easily worth 10 trillion USDs. There's no way it's not. You look at the fair market value of all these resources and commodities and the way that they could be optimized on. You could build 25 million homes in North America without even making a dent, because we still have all of BC, all of Alberta, and part of Manitoba that's part of the boreal forest as well. Never mind when you go up north into northern Yukon, Northwest Territories, where the gold rush is there. They have forest up there as well.
Are you talking up here? Or?
No. That's further. If you go to the map of Canada, you'll see it.
Oh, got it.
The map of Canada will show the boreal forest going all the way across Alberta in the oil sands area and goes all the way up into Northwest Territories and then comes back into BC. Wow. It's massive. The boreal forest covers probably a fifth of Canada.
Let's see. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's massive.
Insane.
So
God.
I'm not kidding you. Like it goes and it absolutely takes over.
It's in Alaska too.
It's everywhere. Like I said, it's the largest forest on Earth, but it's the least diverse. It's basically just the one kind of coniferous tree.
Yeah. What lives in there? Is it like densely populated with animals?
That's great. That's grizzly country. That's moose country. That's timber country. That's elk country. Like this, like we are like, when they say we want to go north fishing, you want to catch a muskie, you want to catch a 40-inch pike, you come to northern Saskatchewan. You fly in Orange, and that's where you get them from.
Wow. You ever been up there?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Really?
And there's no cell technology. Like there's nothing. It's still hunter, trapper, trading furs, everything else like that up there.
That's very cool. It's you don't really get that anywhere else. Like you're really in the middle of nowhere up there. It looks like.
Exactly. And I'm a 4-hour drive from the US border. It's still another 12-hour drive to get to the northern tip of Saskatchewan. Like you could put Saskatchewan in Texas and we would be bigger than Texas.
You could put Saskatchewan in Texas and you'd be bigger.
So yeah, look at Saskatchewan and then look at Texas.
Oh, got it. So this whole thing is Saskatchewan.
This whole rectangle is Saskatchewan. We're the only We're the only symmetrical land in North America too.
That's funny. I see what you mean because Texas. Let's see if so. You're like basically twice the size, maybe 2.5 times the size of North Dakota and South Dakota together, right? You'd say.
I would say yeah, we're about 2.5 of that.
All right, so let's see what that looks like next.
So if you took Joe Biden, Idaho, and turned him facing upwards, it'd be 1.5 of him.
Gotcha. Map of the U.S. So, oh yeah, it is a lot. So, yeah, right.
So it would cover all of Texas, and you would have the east and west wings just hanging out, and it would go. What is that there, in the purple? What's just north of the northeast of Texas there? Oklahoma.
Northeast?
Yeah, it would cover Oklahoma, parts of New Mexico, and go into Colorado and half of Kansas.
Wow.
So Saskatchewan's massive.
Really underrated. Nobody talks about that.
Yeah, and we're landlocked.
No rivers or anything?
Oh, we have the most bodies of fresh water on Earth. There's about 140,000 bodies of fresh water.
In Saskatchewan. Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, you do have most of them. There's some big ones in what's that? Manitoba too.
Yeah, Manitoba has about 12,000. This one here is called Lake of the Prairies, I believe.
This one?
Yeah, that's Lake of the Prairies, and then it just feeds down into the Great Lakes down south, bordering the southern part of Ontario, going into Detroit and everything else like that.
Man. So are you of the mindset that you think it'd be better for Canada to be part of the United States, or you think just a few
100%.
parts of it?
So in order for Canada to really do what it needs to do, they either need to go conservative and create a proper economic union with the United States. And in doing that, they should utilize the resource allocation without any sort of hesitation, border to border and state to state, province to province. No tariffs whatsoever, 100% free trade, unilateral agreements, everything, kind of like they have with Alberta and the different states in the pipelines. In doing that, what we could do North America wide is put a 10% carbon tariff on the rest of the world that isn't utilizing our clean and green resources that are oil and gas friendly, because we have the best oil and gas resources that are the cleanest to produce. That's why it costs so much to do it, is because we make sure that it's the safest, cleanest way to produce it that has the least effect on our environment.
Right.
So it only makes sense to optimize our technology and our resources North America wide, with Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba having such vast resources, along with Quebec and Ontario. They all have resources, but making it so that where the innovation and the money is in the United States can be used up here with a benefit.
Right.
So if we could do that, that would make it so the world could benefit across every lever of industry because of what we have in every different mineral of every industry that we can produce.
Yeah. So, I mean, the real problem with free trade is when one side's able to drastically underpay its labor. So, I mean, that's where we came into the problems with China. What do you think, like, objectively speaking, is the biggest threat for the U.S. with having free trade with Canada? Like, putting yourself in Trump's perspective, why do you think he's putting tariffs on Canada specifically?
Because until a certain level of trade happens, so a certain level of trade has to happen between Canada and the United States before the Canadian tariffs happen on the United States. What Donald Trump wants to happen is he wants there to be no quotas at all. So he just wants the quotas eliminated and no tariffs. So he wants to make it so I'll give you a perspective for the banks. He keeps talking about Canadian banks and American banks, right? Yeah. You've heard him say that.
Yep.
The reason he says that is because in America, all 5 of the big banks are allowed to function 100% in the United States. You can get a mortgage under a Canadian bank in the United States, depending on the state you're in. You can get the proper bank account, do all that kind of stuff. In Canada, You can't have anything other than like a buy now, pay later, a net 30, or an unsecured credit card if it's an American affiliated bank.
Really?
That's because the banks are federally regulated.
They're federally regulated here too, but just what, much less severely?
Way less severely there than they are because it's based on state by state regulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some banks don't operate in other states because they don't want to. The banking system there, you have the option to have your own bank. Well, we don't have that option. We've got credit unions, but they're still beholden to the Canadian Credit Unions Association. So no matter what, you are captured by the federal system. This is where the trucker convoy came in and them debanking people. Right. Instantly. There was no questions asked.
That was crazy.
Well, I'll get into equalization and the transfer payments.
Yeah, hit me.
We got all these resources we talk about in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes down to the resources and everything in the transfer payments, we started the transfer payments in 1957, and the estimated amount from 1957 was to 2008 was about 300 billion. But from 2009 to 2024, it was another 260 billion. Well, that's 560 billion of that. 560 billion in transfer payments. Of that, the province of Quebec in that whole time has received 210 plus billion of it.
So break that down. What does that mean? So transfer payments amongst the whole system is about 500 billion. You're saying Quebec received 200 billion. So what? Like it just has a
billion. And Alberta produced probably around 290 billion of that based off oil and gas and the way that they did their free market enterprise. Yeah. Saskatchewan's probably contributed about 25 to 30 billion because the way we only have 1.25 million people in our province, no matter how big it is. Yeah. We're like, we've got nothing.
So Alberta's the biggest producer because of its population combined with resources. And Saskatchewan has the most potential, but just a low population.
Yeah, low population and heavy regulation on resources based off of the way it's crown land allocated.
And Alberta doesn't have those crown land circumstances?
No, what they did is they did something in the 70s under the previous government. Well, it was a conservative-based government under a guy named Ralph Klein. Mm-hmm. And what he did was he basically told the federal government to kick rocks, and they're opening Alberta up to the world. Okay. And in doing that, that's why there's three main pipelines in Alberta that feed 26 different states.
Wow. So Alberta's really like the Texas of Canada, maybe exactly. Even more extreme. Okay.
100%.
That's why we saw those red dots in the population map where like the Alberta is heavily populated. Nothing else is around it.
Yeah. So the corporate center is Calgary, which is the southern red center. And then the worker and government center is up north where Edmonton is. But all the workers go to northern Alberta where all the oil sands are. Because that's where the refineries, that's where the steam lots and oil sands refinement places are to be able to extract the oil from the sand to be able to put in the pipelines and ship down south.
Okay.
And oil sands extraction compared to fracking, it's about $57 a barrel fair market value on the world market.
Yeah.
Oil sands oil is only about $12 a barrel.
Why?
Because it's expensive to try to extract from the sand.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a heavy process. That's why it costs so much, but that's also why we just extract it and send it crude down south and get it back for the same price. We do a direct trade so that they have a higher amount of oil to be able to refine down south, and then we only consume 1.5% of what we send down there.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating.
Like there's a refinery in the city I live in. We're the capital city of our province. We only have 235,000 people here. That refinery only creates diesel and propane.
And why is that?
Because that's
profitable.
Because that's the way it's regulated in Canada and the agreements that are set up in the United States. Now, here's the kicker. 40% of Canada's oil that's refined comes in off the east coast of Canada into Fredericton, New Brunswick, and is refined there, and that's OPEC oil.
And that's the oil that you actually use?
There's where the tariffs come in.
Okay.
It's a strategic play because what he wants to do is he wants to solidify the Western Hemisphere north and south. Glenn Beck laid it out a month and a half ago when he basically drew out what the plan is to box out China.
Okay, gotcha.
So if he takes over Canada, China's basically consumed half of Canada for resources because we've been beholden to them through the Liberals. Like, look up.
What was their incentive to allow that? Is it just like them getting bribed and paid off?
Did you not hear about the Liberal MP that's a former police officer that told the Chinese consulate that and the Chinese government that they should kidnap a conservative MP and take him to the Chinese consulate as like for a million Chinese dollar reward?
No, I didn't. What do I type in to see that?
I'll send you the here. I believe I tagged you on Twitter in it.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah, if you go to your notifications, and it'll just be the TFG.
Let's see.
Yeah, it'll be I believe it was when I just commented on that. I just commented your name on it.
Let's see. I'm looking. Oh, gotcha. Here we go.
So that,
Yep.
yeah, the Paul Chiang or whatever. Yeah,
So here we go. This one.
Paul Chiang or whatever.
TFG.
No, that's the one that I was talking about between Jared Kushner and Mark Carney.
Got
That's
it.
Kushner Carney.
Yeah, we have to talk about that too.
Yeah, Paul Chiang, Chiang.
Paul Chiang.
Yeah, so just type in Paul Chiang.
Here we go. Despite every effort to bury the story, Carney Liberals TV finally is forced to cover Paul Chiang scandal. This is 2 hours ago out. This is not a joke. People have been executed. Liberals turn blind-eyed to meddling and are not taking the foreign interference seriously. Would Mark Carney ever stand up for Canadians if he's willing to stand for someone? This appalling Liberal MP Paul Chiang called for a Canadian citizen to be handed over to a foreign regime for a cash bounty, and Carney won't fire him. 8 hours ago. Wow.
Yeah. They're like, you want to talk about election interference? There's major election interference here.
So they're looking to China to help rig the election.
That's the guy there. If you go back up to where it had Mark Carney there, that's Paul Chiang. He's a former police officer in Ontario.
He looks Chinese, right?
He's from China. He's a Chinese immigrant that became a Canadian citizen. In Canada, you can immigrate, and once you're a citizen, you can become a politician.
That's so dangerous.
Well, that's why Britain's in the position they're in.
Oh my God. That's national demoralization right there.
It's so bad. And then you look at the CBC. You want to talk about foreign interference, and you want to talk about the media being bought and beholden? Dude, the CBC every year, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the equivalent of the BBC in the UK, receives $1.4 billion in federal funding. 70% of its budget is given to CBC's $1.4 billion budget. That's 70% of its yearly budget is given by the federal government.
And what percent of media is it responsible for?
Well, we only have three main media outlets. We've got the CBC, Global News, and CTV.
Oh my God.
It's bad. And in 2018, there was $585 million in subsidies that were allocated to the three media outlets over a 5-year period, $120 million a year.
Now, and then you have regulations on podcasts too, right? I remember seeing something like that got buried.
Yeah, so I've got it right here, actually. It would be that's Bill C-11, Bill C-16, and Bill C-63. Bill C-11 is the online streaming app, which forces platforms like Netflix to push Canadian content. It's sold as a cultural protection, but if you look at it, it's basically a censorship grab. If it's CBC's bias, they can basically curate what they want. And then there's the Bill C-16, which is like the gender ideology protections from 2017. That's the one that Jordan Peterson got famous on, where he said he wouldn't tell somebody or be forced to call somebody by their pronouns. But if somebody asked to be referred to, he would, out of respect. Now, that's a very simple one there. And then there's this new one, Bill C-63, called the Online Harms Act. Online Harms Act targets online hate speech with $20,000 fines. It's the same thing that we're seeing basically in the UK and Ireland and Scotland with people getting jailed for their posts online.
How strongly are they enforcing this? Like, are they actually arresting people for saying stuff online?
It hasn't passed completely yet.
Okay.
But it's not going to pass. And Canada, we're not pushovers like that. Like, Canada and Poland are the reason the Geneva Conventions exist.
Interesting.
Like, go look up World War I and the Geneva Conventions. Like, never mind storming bunkers. What they would do is they would throw food in there and like coax the soldiers into like thinking they were getting food. And then after 6 or 7 times, they would throw a grenade in there.
Wow, that's savage.
Yeah. So the joke is whenever Canada comes, they ask if it's the Geneva suggestions. Poland calls it the Geneva checklist.
Wow.
So like Dominic Charczynski,
Yeah.
100%. Is a true blue Pole. 100%. There's no beating around the bush with him.
Oh yeah, he's a savage.
Exactly. Well, that's what people from Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba are. These people from Ontario do not represent Canada. These people from Quebec do not represent Canada.
So how organized are the people who feel that way? Because I mean, it's tough. You're against tough opposition with the media being stacked up against you that way, and with Parliament being overly represented by places like Ontario, and then the flow of money overly benefiting places like Ontario. So I mean, like, what do you see as the way to start reversing that?
I think Pierre's been on the right track and doing what he was doing pre the writ dropping, being on the ground and not having a budget to go off of, being able to just spend and be in the main constituencies. Now, if you go look at all the signs that are getting put out for the individuals in the different ridings, you'll notice that there's a trend happening where wherever there's a conservative sign, it'll get damaged and replaced with a Liberal or NDP sign.
Interesting. And
It's bad.
do you think that's the thing where they're like paying people to do that the way they do here?
100%. Look at Act Blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's no different.
Right. It's
And
probably
when
easier to do it there too.
Oh, 100%. The problem is here in Canada, if somebody comes and tries to wreck your stuff and you protect it, you're more than likely to get in trouble than they will.
That's
like
crazy.
It's gotten to the point where people are like, oh, I don't call for help. I just deal with it. And then I don't say anything. They treat it like it's like Montana or Texas, but without guns.
What do you think the odds are of Alberta and Saskatchewan getting together and trying to secede from Canada?
Well, I can actually give you the progression if you want to understand it in the full picture of it.
Yeah.
We had talked earlier today about how if the United States joined the Commonwealth, what that would do with the transfer of power from the UK to the US in being the leader of it.
Yeah.
I would give it its military presence and economic presence around the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
If Canada were to have to secede to the United States, it would go in the progression of Alberta 51. It wouldn't be 51 states, it'd be 63 states. Because each province is big enough to maintain its anonymity. Now, we could see the maritime provinces all amalgamate into one province, but there would be a big fight on that because they each have their own kind of identity with how they function.
Yeah.
So to keep its anonymity, kind of like how Maine and New York and that whole Northeast there is kind of stacked together, but is there 66,000 people that live in Maine?
No, there's a lot more, right?
Well, I don't know how much it is. I just know that there's very little compared to the population of the United States in each state. But in the Maritimes, like in PEI, I believe there's like 66,000 people.
1.4 mil.
Okay. So 1.4 million compared to how many live in the next state over?
Next state over would be what? New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, I believe there's like 4 or 5 million people in New Hampshire.
Says 1.4 as well. Wow.
Really?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Here, I thought
there was more in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire's pretty scarce as well. So is Vermont.
Oh, I guess, yeah, they would have lots of bordering Canada there.
So New Hampshire, Maine. Let's do Vermont too. I bet Vermont's lower than that. Yeah, 600,000.
Yeah. So Vermont is what I'm thinking of for the low population.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you look at the way it's set up, it would be Alberta 51, Saskatchewan 52, Manitoba 53, and then all three of the territories would go next, 54, 55, 56. And then you would see the military have to come in and box out China from Quebec or from BC. And in the boxing out of the Chinese, you would see BC go 57, then you would hop over and the Maritimes would all go 58 to 61. And then Ontario would go 62, and then Quebec would go 63.
Okay, so the most Chinese activity is in British Columbia, you're saying?
Yes.
Wow. So interesting. And
then you look at that border there. It's covering three states. So the border of BC goes into 3 different states.
Ah, wow. Good point.
Well, how hard is it to get to the inland mountains of BC and then cross into the mountains there into Idaho and Montana?
I would imagine pretty easy.
Exactly.
And Washington probably just like spreads its legs open and lets them in.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're piggybacking off of BC's safe consumption protocols.
Oh, yep. So which region do you think is the most screwed up in terms of like just debauchery? Like what's the California of Canada? Is it British Columbia or Ontario?
It's the coast of British Columbia.
So like what? Like this peninsula?
Not the island there, but right in on the mainland in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. So go to Google and type in East Hastings drug issue.
East Hastings drug issue. See. How decriminalization made Vancouver the fentanyl capital of the world. Ooh. Wow. So
yep.
Vancouver is in British Columbia?
Vancouver is the privatized center. You know how I told you there's a government town and a private town?
Yeah.
Vancouver would be the private, and whatchamacallit, the Victoria would be the public, where the government center is.
So just so we could see I like these ones because it shows like where the cities are. So this is Vancouver. This
the dark, almost purple. That's Vancouver.
Okay, and that's where the biggest China activity is.
Yep.
Wow.
I'm going there for a week on Friday.
What are you gonna do there?
I'm just getting away. It's a post-divorce vacation.
Okay.
I'm treating myself after doing what I needed to do.
Nice, well deserved. Why did you choose the fentanyl capital of the world?
I'm going out there because I'm meeting a friend out there. She's taking me to some sightseeing, and outside of going there for some sporting events, I haven't traveled that much.
Oh, cool. All right, so I mean, like, I'm sure there's some nice spots there too. Like, I mean, Chicago. Everybody hears horror stories about Chicago. I was there like a couple years ago, and there's still some cool spots.
It's right on the coast. There's lots of different hiking regions in the mountains and everything else like that. And I just kind of want to see what the attitude is like. The media lies a lot, and during this election season, I'd like to get out a little bit. I know Saskatchewan's going to go 100% blue. There won't be a Liberal seat in Saskatchewan. Same with Alberta. There might be one in Edmonton, and if there is a Liberal seat in Saskatchewan, it'll be one in Regina.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. So
immigration.
Liberals red and Conservatives blue in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're the opposite.
And then they have what's called the NDP, the New Democratic Party. They're orange. I call them no desire for progress because they don't do anything.
Carney's it has Carney ahead by a point right now. Is that or not Carney? It has Pierre ahead by a point, right?
Yeah, like and a week ago, Carney was ahead by 7 points.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's so with everything that's happening, like there was a major plagiarism thing happening with his dissertation or thesis or whatever from when he graduated. And like he did a lot of plagiarizing, and the only way to prevent plagiarizing is like all the information I sent you, I've cited all the sources. I'm not plagiarizing. I'm citing the sources where I've gotten my information, just as you would as a research individual.
Right.
That's all I did was I modified it to not be word for word what they said, to give it the twist on based off of my perspective of it, but citing the source where I got all the majority of the information. That's how that works.
Yeah.
He did no. It's no.
He couldn't even do that. He straight copied it.
Nope. And then his former research head tried saying that oh no, it wasn't plagiarized at all. But there were a whole bunch of professionals in Canada, different universities said no, that's the textbook definition of plagiarism, is using words verbatim from somebody else and not citing the reference.
Oh my God, what a piece of shit.
Well, and if you want, we can get into here. Let me get into the last bit of why we're in the position we're in.
Yeah.
So, with everything being the way it is, it's mainly in Canada. It's the legislative impacts. Why Canada is positioned the way we are is because in the United States, you can take things to court and delay things getting stopped.
Right.
In Canada, the minute you do something politically, it's on hold.
Okay, so the moment they say they want a law in place, it's in place.
Exactly. So when they wanted to stop the pipelines, it just stopped. It just instantly stopped because it had to go to committee.
So, wait, so whose decision is that? That's Prime Minister decision, or the Prime Minister decide, and that's it? Done?
Yep, the Prime Minister and it's the party with the majority.
Okay. Do they have two tiers of Congress the way that we do, or does it just one Congress basically?
A bill is brought forward into the House of Commons. Once it passes scrutiny in the House, so it'll be brought forward into the House of Commons, not for a vote, but for questioning. From there, it'll go down to the specific committee of the industry that it affects. It'll go through scrutiny there, and then it'll come back up to the House of Commons for a vote. And then once if it passes the House of Commons vote, then it'll go to the next level of scrutiny, which is called the Senate. And the Senate is just a safeguard to make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. They're basically just the quality assurance to make sure it's following the Canadian Constitution and not an infringement on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And then from there, the Lieutenant Governor will sign off on it as law, or the Governor General will sign off on it as law.
Sounds kind of similar to our system.
It's almost integrated. We've got the British parliamentary system with a little bit of the American style legal of how you bring laws in.
Mm-hmm. So why is it faster moving there than it is here? Because everybody's more on the same page?
It's because there's less people to interfere in it. The United States is 90 years older than Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Canada only has 40 million people.
Right.
Well, 22 million of those 40 million people live in two provinces.
Right. So they have an outsized impact on votes and congressional representation.
Exactly. And with Quebec as a have-not province, meaning they don't want to utilize their resources, that means with the transfer payments go over to them. So Alberta has gotten $0 in transfer payments in all that time.
That's crazy.
Saskatchewan's received about 500 million.
Saskatchewan has?
Yep.
Received 500 million transfer
We've
payments.
received 500 million in that whole time. Now,
is that bad or good?
To put into perspective, the province of Saskatchewan, our population in 1920s was about 750,000.
Yeah.
And in the year 2000, it was 970,000. So we only grew 200,000 people in 80 years. 2004, I believe, 2004, 2006, our government provincially changed hands. From there, we went from 970,000 people to 1.25 million people in 20 years.
And that's because the government deters people from operating businesses there mostly?
Well, no, what ended up happening, we have a majority conservative government here. Yeah. And what they ended up having to do was the conservatives and liberals had to do a coalition provincially to team up and beat the NDP, which had a stronghold on everything. They're the ones that produce the crowns. And we basically live in a fascist state where the government controls all the means of everything and all the production, and everybody just is employed by them and enjoys it. And if you're a small and medium enterprise, you can own your business, but you're 100% regulated and beholden to the government and their tax system.
It's disgusting.
It's horrible.
Well, man, I feel like we could go like 3 hours on this, but how long did you say until the elections?
It's on April 28th.
28th. All right, so let's do like a once a week Canada rundown up until the election.
Yeah, we can do that.
How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds really good.
All right, cool. Yeah, and I mean, I enjoyed this a lot. I definitely only knew broad strokes about Canada. Like the vast majority of the stuff is new information to me, and I'm sure it's the same for most Americans and probably most Canadians too, to be honest. And there's a lot to think about and a lot that affects both Americans and Canadians with this coming up. So I'm glad that we're talking about it.
That's good. I do have a Minnect. I don't know if you're aware of it. I created one of a Minnect circles called Solutions for Canada. So for any Canadians that are able to come out and want to get some information gathered together about the region they're in and some ways that they can affect change in their region, we're focused on bringing capitalism through small and medium enterprises. 98% of Canada's economy outside of the government is small and medium enterprises under 50 employees. That's 10.7 million people that do that. And if a population of 40 million people, that's 27% of your population that runs small and medium enterprises and how they function.
And that's the heartbeat right there.
Right, 100%. Your small and medium enterprises are the heartbeat of your country, and those numbers, words talk, numbers scream, and we need to increase those numbers. We need to get to at least to 40%, even if it means making individual contractors and doing sub out to reduce payroll tax. Different things to help individuals keep their money.
Jordan, you're like the Canadian patriot.
My grandparents got here in 1957 with $27 and a 2-year-old, and we're told they can't live. Oh, you can't live with your sister in Montreal. Here's 2 tickets to Saskatchewan. Go build that place.
And they did.
And this is where I'm at.
Yeah, I respect the hell out of that. I really do. I mean, I love that you're fighting for the place that you were brought up, that your family's from, and that you care about. So I respect anybody that's doing that, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you out. And let's make it happen with Pierre, and then you can hopefully get this thing on track.
Yeah, let's see. I hope Tony gets a hold of him there from Valuetainment to get him down on the podcast, because there are a lot of Canadians that watch PBD and a lot of the information that's coming out there. So it'd be really good to see Pierre go down and actually get a long conversation with him to get the real information out, because Pat knows how to ask the right questions, and Pierre will be able to give him the answers that he's looking for, and he'll be straightforward with it too. So I hope that lines up. If not, maybe something after, and we can get some real perspective on things. Yeah.
Well, I think that things have gotten probably as bad as they could get there, and I have a feeling it's going to turn around. So I think the future looks bright for Canada as well, not just America. But
I hope the future looks bright in Canada. It's like Pat says, 51% optimistic, 49% paranoid.
Yeah, 100%.
But like it says, 18 degrees. You got to maintain that stability and just not let it get in the way. Follow the signal, not the noise.
100%. Well, Jordan, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. We'll do this again next week, and once a week until leading up to the election. And we'll see what happens. Thank you so much, bro. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate your time. Thanks again, Brandon.
Of course. All right. Talk later. Bye.
See you.